I'm resident of Collinwood for YouTube, Jules Staines, joined by the author of the Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound. My buddy Patrick McRae is here. We're here to discuss more 1841 Parallel Time. We're down to the final two episodes. So this is episode 1244, narrated by Grayson Hall. Really good narration. They pull back on Kendrick a bit here in this episode, I will admit. I wish they would have had more shots of the room.
Okay.
You know, as they needed more Brutus in this actual episode for me.
I could see that. There in fact is none. And that is a problem if that's what you want.
Yeah.
I too found myself longing for the cackle of the Brutus one, the brutal one. Interesting. So we talked about this earlier.
Yes.
I got issues.
Yes.
When and how do we want to jump into this?
Go ahead, let's jump into it now.
Well, as maybe set us up a little bit. What is the central action of this episode? What are the characters really concerned about?
Really, Morgan is concerned with punishment. Let's go by character. He's concerned with punishing Bramwell. He's already punishing him. He's locked him in the room. In a prior episode. Now he wants to punish Catherine. By the end of the previous episode, he locks Catherine in the room, which they recap in this episode.
Yes.
So now Bramwell and Catherine in the room. And what this episode is doing, and Grayson Hall does it beautifully. She reminds us that the events from 100 some odd years ago started because James Forsythe was killed in the room, and then her lover, which was Amanda, who was also killed in the room, and they were locked in the room, and that's what set the curse. That's what Brutus cursed the room. Whoever stays the night in the room, that's when the curse will be broken. So you have Morgan, who's not only put Bramwell in the room, who is Catherine's lover.
Yes.
He has put Catherine in the room, and Catherine is his wife. History has literally repeated itself. And that's really the theme of this episode. I hate to say Dark Shadows had a theme in
it had themes. It had definite themes. Yeah.
But that's its theme for this episode. If this episode had a title, that would be its title. History repeats itself.
Okay.
Because that's what literally happens.
Okay. I am, by my own account, the laziest man this side of a Lebowski. Okay? I mean, my greatest claim to fame was inventing the binge, which we didn't call it that back then because it actually took some work, believe it or not. And I've yet to do an interview about that. I'd be happy to talk about what the hell that crazy summer of 2012 was like. Anyway, I'm a lazy guy. I'm a lazy writer. I am a very lazy storyteller. And I say that to qualify something. There are a lot of times when there's an event I want to make happen, or I just want to have happen.
Right.
And so I just kind of have it happen and hope that readers won't notice that there's no B between A and C.
Right.
I always get caught at it, and I always have to either fix it or scrap the project. It's a very playing with G.I. Joes in the backyard kind of approach. It's sort of like, we need to get to the Andalusians. Okay, let's go. Okay, we're in the Andalusians now. And there's no reference to the vehicle or anything else, but you forgive this because you're kids. But as an adult, you can't really get away with it. The Dark Shadows writers, Sam and Gordon, God bless them. I don't know who wrote this one. I think it was Gordon, because I think Sam wrote the last one. Gordon. God, my hero.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a moment when Jonathan Harris, towards the end of the third season of Lost in Space, went to Peter Packer, who was one of their writers, and said, "Great vegetable rebellion? We fight a carrot? Really?" And Peter Packer looked at him and said, "Jonathan, I just didn't have one more goddamned idea in my head." And sometimes I think maybe after thousands, 1,000 episodes or so, a writer is out of juice. And so in an episode that hinges, no pun intended,
Right.
on a locked door,
Mm-hmm.
Fred kind of takes what looks like a straw and pokes it at the lock a couple of times, and then picks up the spindliest chair he can find and kind of just half-heartedly throws it at it, like he doesn't want to hurt the chair, and then says, "Well, we can't get out." They don't look for a bricked up window. He doesn't look for any other object. He doesn't even look into setting the damn thing on fire.
Right.
And just waiting, trying to wait out smoke inhalation until he can bust it down. On the other side, Kendrick knows that they're in the room and knows there's a chance they could die. At no point does Kendrick, this is a real no atheists in foxholes story. Kendrick is done with the, "Oh, well, those superstitions are nonsense."
Yeah.
The most they'll need is a place to go to the John when they get out of there. Which would have been I really would have given it this. Morgan, you can cackle all you want. It keeps you in one place while we call the police, or wire the police. There's none of that happens. So he makes he doesn't even search very hard for the key once he's in Morgan's room. And Kendrick has been such a hothead, and he has been so aggressive. I just cannot I give Dark Shadows a hall pass on everything. I find something good in everything. But man, the end of the bloody show is too important for that. And to have the characters show so little imagination, I'm killing you with my criticism of Dark Shadows.
Wow.
Keep going, you'll shrink to nothing. No, with this whole thing, to think that they show so little passion, so little ingenuity, so little imagination, that it's like, "Morgan, tell us how to get to that room." "No, I won't." Darn it. And that's the extent of it. I'm sorry, the Kendrick Young I had seen prior to this would have beat the living shit out of Morgan Collins. I mean, Morgan just would not have known. He would have said, "Morgan, what hand do you write with?" "Well, my left hand, of course." "Well, it doesn't really matter because we're going to break both of them." Even after you tell us, wham, wham, Julia, hold him down. And Julia probably would have done it. And so you've got people not really trying very hard on the inside, and people definitely not trying very hard on the outside to get in and save their lives. And if maybe they had just asked Cy Tomashoff to put a rune on the lock, and it's the thing from Brutus that you have to put on there, or there's some sort of magical scrying that appears on the door, we can't get it down, even Morgan's key won't work, whatever, would have explained everything. It would have taken Cy Tomashoff 10 minutes and a brown Sharpie to take care of this. And so, in such an important storyline with such a build-up, I think it's impossible for anyone with over a third grade education to look at this and not wonder how much Robitussin these characters are routinely consuming. And I love this show, and I love it so much that I just cannot let it off the hook for this. And in the words of Mammy Yoakum, I has spoken.
Here's what I'll say too about this episode. Now, with the key that Morgan has,
Yeah.
Keep in mind the reason that's the only key is because in way back when Catherine was selected, and again, this is a lot to remember because they make no mention of this in this episode, that Quentin and Morgan changed the law.
Sure.
So there's only one key, and there's no
Yeah.
Quentin in this episode because they obviously David Selby, he had to leave the show because of his appendix.
I think there's a bird bath outside, and if Kendrick slings it hard enough at that door often enough, that's a second key.
Right. I think when you get into the idea of keys, like of forcing the door open, we'll say, because that's what we're wanting to happen.
Yeah.
Like, okay, here's Kendrick. You're right. He has been he will fight somebody at the drop of a hat. I mean, and he's shown that in this arc. And the writers and John Carlin pull the character back a bit, and it's just like, what are you doing? When Morgan says about stuff in this, literally right in Morgan's own room, John Carlin should just ball his fist up and deck Morgan in character, choreograph a fight on the spot. I don't care at this point.
It wouldn't have taken long.
It wouldn't have.
It wouldn't have. It would have been one punch, and Morgan would have been in 1842 parallel time.
Yeah, and so they don't. That's what sort of hurt. Another thing that hurts this episode, there's no fight sequence between Kendrick and Morgan, and there should be.
That's for every episode.
Yeah, I mean, and as far as forcing the door open, yeah, you don't have any axes laying around, you don't have any swords hanging on the wall.
Or now I'm sure it's somehow bricked up, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe, but I don't know if this is the top floor or not, but they have an attic, and they have heavy objects. They can always come down from above.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly if they bricked up the windows, but if they're just boarded up, I mean, there's a guy who cleans the gutters, and he's on the grounds. He's the groundskeeper. Knock out that it's one of those things, like when it came to the fine art of beating the living crap out of Morgan Collins, chapter 2. Bromwell has made mention of the fact that he's tight with the servants.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Kendrick has probably picked that up, and Kendrick has probably met some of them, and he's gotten along with them too. I don't know why you're not allowed in the drawing room. We just don't have the budget. But all he has to do is get some of the servants and say, hey, Bromwell, the guy you like, and Catherine, the one who's actually nice to you. Yeah, they're trapped in the haunted room right now, and Morgan's gone crazy, and he's probably going to kill you after them. So he's right. He's telling the truth. See, Julia agrees with me. So how about we hold him down and we beat him to death?
Yeah.
And then we'll carve his femur into a bone, into a key, and we'll open the door with that.
Yeah, I mean,
it's Tuesday night. We got nothing else to do.
Yeah, they pull back on this episode with the characters of Kendrick and even Julia, and basically, well, not basically, Morgan has free reign, and it with no real consequence. And again, in the next episode, he pays for it all, and I get that, and we get that. But I'm not saying you have to kill him in this episode, but goddamn, fight with him. Do something. Wrestle with the guy. I don't care. Put him in a headlock. Body slam him. Do something.
Yes. Yeah, I imagine a confrontation that I think Gordon wrote this one. I really do, because I think Sam wrote the next one. And although it's easily Googleable by one of us. But I'm on too much of a roll to worry about the truth. I imagine there being a confrontation at some point with, Dan saying, this doesn't make any sense. Why don't they break down the door? Yeah. And just Gordon looking at him saying, now it doesn't make any sense. Do you know how many of your ideas I have forced into the world? Like an obstetrician dealing with a near stillborn child that didn't want to be born. And now after all this time, because I have to pad an episode that didn't need padding, I'm expected to make yet something else make sense. You're the big producer. You make it make sense. I read my own script tonight of Dark Shadows. It doesn't make sense, and I wrote it, but you won't fix that. So you fix it. I'm not even writing. I'm gonna appear as the bootman. Let's see what you say about that. I know where you sleep, Curtis.
I do think that, look, the writers were gassed. I mean, that, to be fair, they were probably out of ideas, but I think it's not so much we're asking for clever ideas. It's just simple logic of the characters that we've come to love and know within this arc. If Kendrick is going to swing at Gabriel for trying to kill Melanie, he's damn sure going to swing at Morgan for locking two people in a room. Like, come on. That's what we're nitpicking about. It's uncharacteristic of Kendrick not to fight with Morgan. It's uncharacteristic. They half-ass search for the key in Morgan's room that you brought up. They don't try to do anything to Morgan to get the key off of him, and that's the biggest mistake they make as a character from a Kendrick standpoint. And really, they do nothing to try to break the door down.
Could you imagine what Julia would have done in this situation?
Oh my God.
Julia, who clocked her own sister to death with a candlestick, or her own double?
Oh, Dr. Julia Hoffman would have been bringing an axe.
An axe in one hand and a hypno disc in the other.
That's it. She'd have looked at Kendrick and said, "Hey, hand me that revolver," and she would have capped Morgan's ass so fast.
Yes.
I mean,
yes, his life is irrelevant.
Yeah.
And it is. I have made a small, non-financially fruitful career of explaining Dark Shadows to myself, exploring Dark Shadows, defending it, loving it, and trying to show other people one way that they can love it with sort of fresh eyes, and so on and so forth. And this is just one whiff of horsepucky too much. This is because it's just a betrayal of the characters as we know them. And I realize that, the conversation probably was, Sam, we've got one more episode to go. Yeah. For one thing, nobody's paying attention to this, if they're even watching anymore. And if they are, they're just waiting for the next one. We could have monkeys fly out from under Grayson's dress. And I know you've thought of it, Sam, but seriously, we get a monkeys fly out from under Grayson's dress and no one would notice. So no one's going to notice this, man. I got a martini waiting for me, and I suspect it has a twin. So let's aim Gray. Let Leela figure it out, for God's sake. She's the know-it-all.
Well, by the way, you're right. I looked it up while you were talking. Gordon Russell does write this episode.
Gordo, because Sam writes the last one.
Yeah. So I just think, again, uncharacteristic of Kendrick not to fight Morgan. Uncharacteristic for them not to try to break down the door. And then on the other side of the door, and yes, there is a whole episode left. But you need Brutus. Now they do an effect with the music and the chandelier, which is cool.
Yeah.
But some Brutus. You don't get any Brutus in this episode at all, and it's like that's sort of something I wanted to see in the final two episodes. Give me more Brutus, because this is a guy who has cursed your family for this goddamn long.
Mm-hmm. At least a catty note.
Yeah.
Brutus on a pillow.
Now,
you're wearing that to a damnation? Really? Love Brutus.
Now, there are good things about this episode, and I will point them out.
Do it.
Keith Prentice did a hell of a job. I mean, he's
going for the gold.
Yeah, he takes this episode over, and rightfully so. I do think I think Keith would have been okay with a choreographed fight between him and John Carlin. I mean, he would have tussled. I mean, he tussled with Jonathan Frid's character with no problem. So I don't think there would have been an issue there. I just think it's something the writers should have put in, and we could have seen a good, clean, fun fight. No, but we don't get that. But other than that, I really enjoyed Keith Prentice's performance in this, putting his wife in the room, putting Catherine in the room in the prior episode. We get the recap in this one, and it's shot a little differently, but I like how they do it here too. I give Catherine, Laura Parker, and Jonathan Frid a lot of credit for this episode too. They really sold the room, even though a lot wasn't really happening. Some stuff happens. Give those two credit because they sell the hell out of that room.
You know, Jewel, I love what you have to say, and I agree with all of it. What I'm shocked you didn't mention, and what you never mention, you never give credit to the people who read the opening narration. You never say anything about it, and I'm here to tell you it was Grayson Hall.
Actually, I did say Grayson Hall did the opening narration.
Did you? Well,
yes.
You say that tonight. You call me up when we're not doing episodes, and you say, "Hey, Patrick," I'll say, "What?" You say, "Grayson Hall did the opening narration on your upcoming death," and then you hang up the phone and laugh. Night has fallen on Knoxville.
You know
as hipsters grow jubilant.
I like that they had Grayson Hall finish the rest of the narrations, but if I had to change one narration, it would be the final episode, and I would have either A, had Laura Parker narrate it, or B, Joan Bennett.
Well. Really? Because I tell you who I would have had narrate it.
Go ahead.
Alexandra.
Yeah. Really good.
All she would need to say, night is fall, or dawn is rising on the great house of Collinwood as I finish my final chapter of the book, inspired by my readings of its history.
Yep.
Boom. Yep. And that's it. And that would just be for anyone paying attention. Yep. Because what's it gonna hurt if they don't do it, or if they do it? You know, that's too big a risk to take.
No, it's not.
Really? What are we gonna do, Dan? You know, night's falling on the Exchequer bar here. They're bringing over another round of whiskey sours for
if that, like, let's say if we would have went back in time and pitched that to them, hey, have Alexander read the final episode, and they say that's too big of a risk. Like, so really, so the Leviathans wasn't too big of a risk.
Yeah.
Really, like, come on.
Yeah. Of course, we're having arguments that never happened with people.
I know.
But still, it's a fun thought.
Right. I think that would have been awesome. That'd have been awesome to have.
It would have been really cool.
Yeah, it would have. Okay, so what's something you like about this episode? We know what we don't like.
Well, I mean, the epic spread. Just the epic nature of it. Of course, you have to. It's like a law. Yeah. How about you?
Great. There's a lot of Grayson Hall and John Carlin searching for the key. They sort of somewhat don't search for it. They half-ass search for it. I wish they would have just tore up his room. That's something I wish they would have done. Now, what I loved all the little shots we get. We get the drawing room, we get Morgan's room, and we haven't been in we've only ever been in Morgan's room when Catherine's been in there. So this is like the first time we've been in it that someone else, actually other than them two, have been in the room, which is cool. Though it's minuscule, but it's cool. I really love the swinging of the chandelier and the music we get. Bob Cobert strikes again. Thank God. Even though we don't get Brutus, we do get some cool effect in this movie, in the show. We get great, and I want to stress this, great acting by Jonathan Frid, by Laura Parker in the room, selling the room. Laura Parker selling that she's possessed. Jonathan Frid say, "No, you're my Catherine. You're my Catherine." It's very soap opera, and I love that. We're having a lot of soap opera moments in the final episodes of Dark Shadows, and we've had them in this arc. I mean, so it's nothing new, but it's great to see. And I really, really enjoyed the hell out of Keith Prentice, just Morgan being a complete bastard.
Yes.
Just Keith Prentice. I was watching the final 2 episodes with Julie today, and I said, man, if Dark Shadows would have continued, Keith Prentice is your star. I mean,
what did she say?
She goes, well, don't they? She goes, well, don't they kill? But they kill his character. I said, yeah, they kill Morgan, but in regular time, they would have created a character for him to play. And I said, he would have been a hell of a character for the present day.
Absolutely fantastic.
She goes, she goes, he shouts a lot. And I'm like, yes, he does.
Now you get it.
But just a great actor and great acting all around, even though we get a lot of pullback from certain characters like Kendrick. Overall, I'm not trying to give him a complete pass, but I will say this. If I could change one thing about this episode, it would be that John Carlin's Kendrick would have fought with Morgan. Fist fought.
I concur. I think that was a necessary thing, and I am sorry. I don't like to see those boys fighting any more than you do.
Right.
Those Shadows boys. But in this case, yes, I think a few toughness lessons maybe would have helped.
Yeah, I think it's something that was lacking in this episode, and from it's not just needed from an episode standpoint. It's needed from a character standpoint. We've had, and the writers knew this. We've had Kendrick fight at the drop of a hat before. Well, what's changed? Nothing. Okay, great. Have him fight Morgan here.
Yes.
And it'd have been a great choreographed fight, I think, but it doesn't happen. A lot of the things that do happen are good. I don't think they're bad. It's just there's the worst thing that happens to me too in the room is when Jonathan throws that chair at the door.
It's a little embarrassing.
It's just now if he would have just actually took the chair and held onto it and hit it and the chair broke, that would have looked cool. Him picking the lock, I sort of wish we would have heard a snapping sound. Maybe what he was using broke, but we don't. He just throws it down after using it. It's little things like that we're sort of nitpicking at, but there are important things I think they could have easily fixed.
Sure, and I mean, on one hand, I feel bad pointing it out, because this is when people suddenly rush in and go, "Oh, it's just a soap opera," and it's like, no, it's a little more than that, and let's give it credit for being a little bit more than that.
Yeah,
just a little bit.
It's been really, really great episodic television. And I think even in this entire arc has been really, really great to watch. Going back and watching every episode. Even though watching this episode, it was like, oh, they could have did this, they could have did that. It's still a fun episode to watch.
It is.
And I think that one of the best takeaways you can get is, hey, Bob Colbert got to play some music. And we did get some pretty cool, chandelier effects and great acting from Lauren, Jonathan, and Keith. The final episode is a really interesting one. I can't wait to get into that with you. I watched both today, but
Joel, before a long trip or before a breakup or something like that, couples often have fights.
Yeah.
Because it makes it easier to be away from it. I feel like this is my fight I'm having with Dark Shadows to make the pain of being away from it a little easier to deal with.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah, because I mean we're discussing the final episodes of Dark Shadows that aired. And you know, even though we're not done talking Dark Shadows, we're going to talk more about it. But these episodes are important to watch. Now, here's something I want you to do when we're both going to do when we do the final episode.
I think this is. I've always dreaded you beginning a sentence like this. So let's just see where it goes.
Okay.
What do I have to wear?
If you could have did anything with the final episode, the way they ended it, what would you have changed about it? I'll give you mine when we come back, and you can give me yours.
You realize we don't have a commercial break, right? You mean we come back tomorrow?
We come back tomorrow.
Yes. Okay. Good. For a moment it sounded like when we come back after the break.
No. When we come back tomorrow night.
Okay.
And do the final episode. So tomorrow night at 11 p.m. we'll discuss the final episode, obviously Dark Shadows of 1841 Parallel Time. And what would you have changed about the ending of the final episode? I know what I would have changed. Okay. I want to get your thoughts on it too. We'll hear those thoughts tomorrow night. But before we go, is there anything you want to add about this?
No. I think this is. I think we have said enough.
Yes. Really nice episode overall. Even though we've had some complaints about it, I do think it's an enjoyable one. You can go back and watch and still get some enjoyment out of, because there's great acting in it. Bottom line,
there is.
There is. That's my final say on it. So, link to the Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound is going to be in the description box. As always, go pick that bad boy up if you haven't. Patrick, sir, it is always a pleasure. I will see you tomorrow night, my friend.
Okay. Be seeing you.
Be seeing you. Bye.